So we're going to go over section one and give you a quick review leading up to the test. Just kind of go over some of the key concepts and review the PowerPoint that we've already gone over. Section one's all about trails to the west, and this is kind of one of the shorter sections. Maybe not as much detail in this one, but we still need to know some of the key facts. So Americans start to move west. There was the main thing that brought people to the West early on was like we talked about, economic opportunities. And we talked in class, it's not in the PowerPoint, but we talked in class about push and pull factors. And one of the main pull factors that pulled people into the West, and when we think of pull factors, we always think of positive things, it was the fur trade and the economic opportunities that could be made through the fur trade. There were many mountain men, okay, as we point out here, the mountain men went there seeking um, economic opportunity and the ability to trap fur, send it east, and make a lot of money. So it was a positive experience for them. And one of the main mountain men, one of the more popular ones, a guy named John Jacob Astor, who founded what would now be known as the city of Astoria in Oregon. Um, but he founded a major fur trading post and made a lot of money there. So these early mountain men, they lived a rough life, but they made a lot of money on what they did. Okay, even when we look at the Oregon Trail, that was mainly used for people who were looking for new opportunities and new ways of life and expanding westward. So wasn't so much being pushed out of the east, it was being pulled towards the opportunities to make money, to live a different life, to start fresh on new land. As we talk about the Oregon Trail, it's a 2,000 mile long trip. It took 6 months and it costs, like we said, probably a year's salary. So in order to make that kind of commitment, they certainly thought that there were going to be economic opportunities out in the west in the Oregon Territory. Talking about the Santa Fe Trail, kind of a similar concept here. All right, 1,200 mile trip took 2 months, so not nearly as long, but you're going through desert and very harsh conditions. But people did this primarily for trade and looking at trade with Mexico. They were actually going into Mexico at this time. As we know, that present day New Mexico and Santa Fe was then part of Mexico. They weren't looking to settle there so much as they were looking to make money through trade. And that was their primary purpose. And they were able to make huge profits by taking these Mexican goods that they had traded and taking them back to the East Coast and selling them. Okay, so a lot of money was to be had through the Santa Fe Trail. Now, when we talk about the Mormons, that's one of the first push factors that we see. A negative aspect of a society pushes people away. All right, so when we're talking about the Mormons, we're talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, founded in New York. Okay, gained popularity and gained a lot of members, but eventually some aspects of the religion, such as polygamy, kind of led to people persecuting them. So the religious persecution pushed them westward. Okay, from New York to Illinois and eventually to Utah. All right, and we see thousands of Mormons following Brigham Young after the death of their founder, Joseph Smith. Brigham Young led them on the Mormon Trail, which kind of paralleled the Oregon Trail for a while and then split off into Utah, and that's where the Mormons eventually settled in present-day Utah around Salt Lake City. The next section we're going to quickly talk about is the Texas Revolution as one of the key chapters in the development of our westward expansion. Okay, so in 1821, Mexico became independent of Spain, and they really wanted to increase the population in these new lands, or the new country. So they actually encouraged people to come into Texas, and some of the people they encouraged to come in were actually Americans. Okay, so a lot of Southern Americans came into Texas, mostly for the free land. That was a huge benefit, to get free land in a new territory that was kind of opened up. That was a great economic opportunity. So once again, kind of a pull factor for a lot of Southern Americans. One in particular, Stephen F. Austin, set up a colony around the Colorado River and kind of established a city there for these new Americans coming into Texas. Like we said, the Mexican government, in exchange for this free land, they asked them to abide by Mexican laws. And one of the key Mexican laws forbids slavery. And that was going to be a big issue for a lot of these Southerners because, like we said, they came from the South and they brought with them the concept of making money through cotton. And they wanted to use slaves to work on their plantations and to make them vast profits off of cotton production. Okay, the Mexican government wasn't okay with that, and when they saw that the Texans were coming in and bringing in slavery, they got a little mad, and eventually they cut off Texas to Americans. Like we said, as they were worried that they were losing control of the population, they banned further settlements. Mexico comes under the control of this new general, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna, who kind of turns Mexico into a military dictatorship. Um, he sees this as a problem and wants to take control of his territory. All right, so he turns his attention towards Texas with the eye on dealing with this problem that has arisen in his colony. Eventually, the Texans do end up declaring their independence from Mexico. Santa Anna obviously took exception to this and was not going to allow that to happen. So he sends troops north to stop the rebellion. Like I told you in class, the Texans actually anticipated that Santa Anna would wait until the spring to send his army. Santa Anna doesn't hesitate sending his troops through the winter into Texas, which kind of caught the Texans off surprise. So they decide that they have to find a way to slow him up and stop his advance. So they send a small force to San Antonio to set up a defense to try to stall him for as long as possible. And they set up in a mission called the Alamo. Like we talked about in class, a mission would give you some walls, kind of a fort-type feel. Not an actual military fort, but as good as they could do for the time in San Antonio. So these troops were ordered to occupy the Mexican army as long as possible, while Sam Houston was in the north organizing an official Texan army to stop Santa Anna and his troops. All the time, the defenders at the Alamo hoped to be reinforced and thought they would be reinforced. They had no plans of losing their lives and sacrificing their lives for Texas independence. They thought they'd be reinforced and they thought they'd be able to hold off the Mexican army or eventually retreat and join the main army. This is a famous letter from William Travis basically saying, hurry up, get over here as soon as you can, because they needed reinforcement. Only having 200 troops, they were going to be in trouble. So there are many famous men there, Davy Crockett, Jim Bowie. The individuals aren't as important as what happened there. Like we said, 200 Americans fought in the Alamo against an army of over 2,000 Mexicans. The Mexican army said that there would be no quarter, of course, meaning that there would be no surrender. They would fight until every defender is dead. So when the actual battle started, no reinforcements arrived, and all 200 defenders at the Alamo were killed. Later on, at the Battle of Goliad, Santa Anna won the battle and took 350 prisoners, 350 Texans, and had them executed, killing all of them. Santa Anna, like we said, was hoping to kind of scare off the rebels and scare them into giving up and going back into the fold with Mexico. Of course, that kind of backfired on him. Eventually, Santa Anna would face off against the army led by Sam Houston at the Battle of San Jacinto. Like we talked about, Santa Anna was kind of cocky, didn't really take the Texans seriously, put himself in a bad defensive position, and was surprised by the Texans, and his army was annihilated. All the while during the battle, the Texans cried yells of "Remember the Alamo" and "Remember Goliad," which showed that the Texans weren't scared off by this action, the executions of prisoners and the no quarter. They were actually inspired to fight harder and to fight for their fallen comrades. So that strategy really backfired for Santa Anna. And at the end of the battle, they capture Santa Anna and they force him, like we said, basically at gunpoint to sign a treaty giving Texas its independence. Texas would become an independent nation. Sam Houston was named a hero and eventually became president of Texas, and the capital was named after him. Texas immediately wanted to join the United States, wanted to enter the United States as a state. They had no intentions of becoming an independent state for long, but President Andrew Jackson actually refused to allow Texas in, would not annex Texas, because he feared that the addition of a free state would alienate the addition of a slave state in Texas would alienate the free states in the north, that you couldn't add a slave state without adding a free state on top of that. So Jackson actually refused to add Texas at that time, and Texas would be an independent state for over 8 years, an independent nation.